Most common questions. Okay, so these are the most common questions that I have gotten for over a decade, and the most common questions that I get today, whether they're friends and family who were interested in Bitcoin from the beginning, laughed at me, made fun of me, then and even now, they're all the same questions. People want to know a couple questions about Bitcoin, and this is what they are. So I decided to dedicate one specific section to go over these so that if people want to go right to this section, you can and see some of these questions because it just seemed convenient. So with that being said, the very first one, maybe the most popular one is, how high is Bitcoin going to go? That's where we're going to start. So the short answer is probably somewhere in the 7 figures, which is anywhere from 1 million to almost 10 million. When I first heard about Bitcoin, when it was about $1 per coin, I looked everywhere on the internet to find price predictions. I heard anywhere from 0 to 50,000, all the way to $1 million per coin from Rick Falkvinge. I saw it and I watched it when Bitcoin was only worth $1. I watched it grow to about 30. Before this, it was something even a fraction of a penny, fraction of a dollar. Yet Bitcoin still made it to $1. And then it made it to $10. And then it made it to $100. So my point is that Bitcoin is already a success because it's not zero and people are still using it. They're still talking about it. They're still investing in it. The next step, or the next, like the future, is what order of magnitude, what 10x increase is it going to be next? Because that's how it seems to move over time, are these 10x increases. The fact that the price is still going up tells me and everyone else that the market hasn't decided what should be the going rate for one Bitcoin. Otherwise, it would stay flat for several years or maybe be harder to manipulate. Bitcoin hasn't reached what we'd call a price equilibrium. It should reach a point like the US dollar where it remains pretty steady and constant and superior in price, in my opinion, compared to every other currency. I predict that over the next maybe 12 to 18 months, we'll see a new high anywhere from $75,000 to maybe $200,000 per one Bitcoin. Some think higher, some think less, but that's my guess. That's my opinion. After it tops out to that higher number, and by higher, I think it's going to go higher than the 64,000 that we saw a couple months ago, it's going to crash like it always does, probably something to $10,000 to $20,000. And it's going to hover between the $25,000 to $75,000 mark, maybe for the next 5 to 10 years. At that point, maybe it'll start its final ascent upwards. I used to think there'd be only like one final spike. I'm beginning to think there's going to be 2 final spikes, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the next spike, I believe, after this, which let's just say that the price of one Bitcoin in the next couple months, or the next 12 to 18 months, hits $75,000 to $200,000 per coin, and then it stays, it crashes and it stays low for 5 to 10 years. I think after that, the next spike will be somewhere between $1 to $5 million per one coin, and it'll have kind of like a similar run up, and it'll do these dips. It'll hit this, and then it'll crash again, probably crashing somewhere in the 6 figures at times, maybe $75,000 to $150,000, and just hover around that, even though it was in the millions. Maybe it'll hover around 150, 200,000, something like that. And if that isn't the end, then I think it could have one final ascent. And this is kind of a new prediction that when I started to do this eCourse, I didn't see or believe in yet, but because of a couple factors, I now do. So if there was going to be a final spike, I think it'll bring Bitcoin to an all-time high of anywhere from $10 to $50 million per coin. $10 to $50 million per coin. It just seems that to me there's very few tried and true use cases for Bitcoin outside of the store value and the hedge against inflation. And at $35,000 or even to $65,000, no one really can tell me convincingly that it should stay at that price. Everyone kind of agrees it should be higher or close to $1 million or more. And I'm basing that prediction on what I've seen since I got into the market, all that I've read about people's predictions based on fundamental analysis, which is studying the fundamentals behind an investment, and the technical analysis, which is studying the highs and lows and the shapes of a price on a graph, which is really no more to say that the emotions of the market as represented by price on a graph. Bitcoin is a superior currency. Storing your wealth in it is much better and safer and more beneficial than a bank or even in just fiat currency like dollars. And what it can become with smart contracts, what it can do with replacing MoneyGram and Western Union, using it in remittances, using it in all of our IoT, Internet of Things devices, for tipping, for advertising, for manufacturing. The possibilities really, they're limitless. There isn't an end to what crypto can touch. And it keeps proving to us what it can do and that it can replace or at least disrupt almost everything it touches. Couple that with the fact of the inflation we're currently experiencing, all the prices are up right now. Everything seems to be a little bit inflated. And so that's why I think $10 to $50 million per coin is legitimate, because that much money, $10 to $50 million 50 years ago. So if we were to go in the future 10, 20 years from now or 30 years from now, $10 to $50 million won't seem as much as it does today, because the purchasing power of the dollar, if it's still around, the US dollar, isn't going to be the same because of inflation. Unless inflation changes or goes away, it loses its purchasing power. So I say for my prediction, maybe the high would be $10 to $50 million, but that's relative to fiat currencies. But I won't go too deep into this. I know you can kind of go down a lot of rabbit holes with economics and pricing. So there's my summary on the Bitcoin price prediction. So the next question is, how do I get some? Fortunately for you, there are a lot of ways to get Bitcoin now. The easiest way that I found and what I personally use and recommend, and what I have my family, my parents who are in their 70s, and what is Coinbase. It's Coinbase.com. Are there other exchanges? Yeah, I've used almost all of them. Are there other ways to get Bitcoin, like through Bitcoin's own Craigslist called localbitcoins.com? Yeah, you can do that too. To start, I recommend Coinbase just to kind of dip your toes in the crypto space. It's been the easiest to use. I've had great success with customer support. I even applied to work for them at one point. Like, I made it to kind of one of the final rounds. But there's one caveat here, and you should know what I'm going to say. Not your keys, not your coins. And with exchanges, if you hold anything substantial in Bitcoin on an exchange, and again, substantial is relative, whether it's $1,000 or $1 million or $100, you're most secure if you keep the majority of your Bitcoin in either a paper or hardware wallet offline in a cold wallet rather than a hot wallet until you're ready to spend it or trade it. So Coinbase went public a couple months ago, and I think it estimated at $60 or $70 billion of value, which is incredible, which is great, again, but it could still go bankrupt. It could still, criminals could run away with, money. It could be hacked. Anything could happen to Coinbase. I don't think it will. We never think disaster will strike until it does, and we look back and say, how did we miss it? See what I'm saying? Not to try to freak you out, but it's just the truth. Bitcoin are safest stored on a paper or hardware wallet. Why can't I just mine Bitcoin? I get this question all the time, and really, you can't mine anymore because there's just too many miners mining that are using much faster hardware than you. The way Bitcoin runs is based on users running a full node, a Bitcoin node, or the full software, or actually running these miners, you running that full node and trying to verify transactions and compete for that puzzle. And the greater the processor power or collection of processing power that they call hash rate, the greater the chance you have to solve that puzzle and get the new Bitcoin and transaction fees. In 2009, you could use any old computer, its CPU. But as the years progressed, people learned that they could earn more Bitcoin if they solved more puzzles, obviously, and that motivated them and companies to make better technology. It went from went from the CPU to the earliest that you could mine to a graphics card to a FGPA to now ASICs, and these ASICs are just getting faster and faster. But instead of a user using one or just a bunch of these ASICs, we have companies with thousands and thousands of these ASICs in warehouses that have server farms, which is what they run them on, these ASICs, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and they make billions of dollars in profit every month. I think you can compete with that if you try to pool some of your resources and join a mining pool. And I will say this, something has changed since I wrote this content, and that was what happened in China. It was just a couple weeks ago. But China kicked out all of the miners, all of the Bitcoin miners. I didn't expect that. I did not expect that. Many people didn't expect that. So, while I still agree, I don't think it's a good idea to mine, or is it really viable as a way to bring in extra money or to earn Bitcoin, there's a real opportunity right now for mining. Okay, if you want to get into it now, this is a very, very good window, and it's something that I'm thinking about considering myself.